Good morning. First, let me thank the Howard University Choir and their director, Dr. Eric Poole, for that stirring rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing. This is just our way of saying good morning, but also welcome to Howard University and the 2021 Inclusion Imperative Symposium, hosted by the Dresher Center for the Humanities at the University of Maryland in Baltimore County and Howard University. My name is Okianer Christian Dark, and I am Associate Provost for Faculty Development at Howard University. Let's talk about this theme. We chose the theme, Uncomfortable Conversations, Race, Humanities, and Inclusion in Higher Education. We actually chose it in 2019 when we thought we would have the symposium in 2020. But of course, we know what 2020 was. But even then, we felt that too often these conversations about racial bias were avoided for a myriad of reasons. It's ugly. It can be personally revealing, scary, hard, hurtful, and can lead to misunderstanding. What if I say something wrong? But then 2020 came with the deaths, oh no, the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and more recently, the murders of 6 Asian women in Atlanta, Georgia. Revealing as though it wasn't already obvious, but for some, it was not. Revealing that those historic roots of inequality, racial bias, and discrimination were not simply a thing of the past, but this is our present. How can we avoid these conversations about bias and privilege, about police violence or economic inequality or housing inequality? No matter the field or learning space, including arts and humanities, these crucial conversations come up and they cannot be avoided. And they come up in higher education, and it's really not an option for us not to have them. We must equip our students to see systemic racism, to be able and willing to engage in action that can lead to positive change in their fields of study and in our communities, so that the lived reality of the present and our future will be one of inclusion and equity and a fair and just society for all. So we've organized this symposium so that more of our time will be devoted to sharing strategies and approaches to facilitate these conversations on race. And you will be hearing from a cross-section of creative, energetic, and courageous group of teachers and scholars who are doing this work with their students. Now, these presentations were selected from a large response to our call for proposals to present at this symposium, and we chose the best and the most interesting for this conference and for you. Honestly, we included many. So that will help to explain why there isn't a lot of time in this conference for Q&A. A little bit, but not a lot. But it's our hope that you will be inspired by what you hear and that you will leave with some of those strategies and approaches to implement in your classes. Now, I'd like to let you know, and periodically I will, that the program for this symposium is in the chat, and you can go to the chat and click on it, and you can also download it. But I'd also at this point like to turn it over to our partner and on the initiative, Dr. Jessica Berman, who is the lead on the Inclusion Imperative Initiative. Dr. Berman?
Thank you so much, Associate Provost Dark. I couldn't be more thrilled, especially since we planned this to happen a year ago, to have this happening today. And I want to welcome all of you to the 2021 Inclusion Imperatives Diversity Teaching Network Symposium, offered this year in special partnership with Howard University. I want to offer my deep gratitude to Howard University. We feel very welcomed, although we wish we were able to gather in person today on your beautiful, beautiful campus, not far from where I'm sitting in Washington, D.C. I want to particularly thank the organizing committee at Howard, who have been working on this for what seems like a very long time, and especially Associate Provost Dark, Dr. Ilka Stevens, and Ms. Jacqueline Young. I also want to thank my Inclusion Imperative team at the Dresher Center for the Humanities at UMBC, Ms. Rachel Brubaker and Ms. Ali Kosserhan, and Janet Schwartzman, who designed the gorgeous program booklet you should be able to download from the chat. And I hope you will go ahead. You can look at it in your browser, but I think it works better if you download it. So please do go ahead and do that so that you can follow along with us. There are others to thank. You'll be able to see them listed in the program. And of course, this event today would not be taking place without the hard and excellent work of all these folks and people behind the scenes helping us in this Zoom room today. Also want to recognize our other partners in the Inclusion Imperative, Bowie State University and Coppin State University, who have been in this from the beginning when it was just an idea and we were gathering a working group to chat and share ideas collaboratively and then go forward with them. We're very privileged to be working together with you. And I think about that often when people talk about the difficulties of working across institutions, across different racial and ethnicities, across varieties of academic settings. So I'm very privileged. And we've also had some other folks join us over the years. And I know there are people here from James Madison University, from Morgan State. So I want to give a shout out to those folks who've also kind of reached out to us, but also lots of other institutions in the region and beyond. And of course, none of this would be possible without the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, whose visionary leadership and funding in the humanities has been so instrumental to advances in our field. When I first had the glimmer of an idea for the Inclusion Imperative programs, it's about 5 years ago now, I never could have imagined it would lead to this. More than 125 people registered today who are gathered to share ideas and interconnect around inclusive and engaged teaching and scholarship. And that's an important message that we're sending, right? That everyone's taking, so many people are taking this day to think about these important questions. And I couldn't have imagined the powerful relationships that have been developed, as I mentioned, across our varied institutions over the years. I see at the symposium many folks, not just the institutions, but people, individuals who have been at many of our workshops, come again and again, been our fellows or our collaborators. I know collaborations have come out of those workshops and the symposium that Bowie State University so generously hosted a couple of years ago, or people who have simply been in support of this wide-ranging and ever more important project. We've built a community of practice that has emerged slowly with hard and collaborative work, and I'm supremely grateful for the collaborative learning journey you've taken me on over the past few years. I'm looking forward to what you'll teach us today and into the future. I hope you'll stay in touch. I hope you'll come back. This work is so very important, and you are the ones who are doing it. So now to introduce a professor of language, literacy, and culture, and interim dean of the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, Dr. Kimberly R. Moffitt. Dr. Moffitt is a media critic and whose research focuses on mediated representations of marginalized groups, as well as the politicized nature of Black hair and the body. She's published several articles and book chapters, as well as 5 co-edited volumes, including Michelle Obama and the FLOTUS Effect, which was 2019. Her latest work explores the Black body in Disney programming and the impact of colorism on Black teens. Dr. Moffitt often writes op-ed articles in the Baltimore Sun and is a frequent guest on local public radio, television, and internet broadcasting programs. She's a member of the public service sorority Delta Sigma Theta, the vice president of the board of the National Association for Media Literacy Education, and founding parent and former board member of Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys Charter School, a 4th through 8th college prep school. She's also a proud 2000 grad of Howard's Ph.D. program in communications. So shout out to that program for giving us Dr. Moffitt. And before assuming her current role at UMBC, she was director of the Language Literacy and Culture doctoral program and a professor of communication and media studies, as well as affiliate professor of Africana studies at UMBC. Welcome, Dr. Moffitt.
Good morning, and thank you so much for that, Jessica. I will keep my remarks brief because I do want to dive into the day hearing from Dr. Hopkinson and all of the wonderful proposals that have been presented for today's symposium. So good morning to you. I'm glad to be here this morning to acknowledge the support of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation for the Inclusion Imperative, to see in action the collaborative work of our institutions, UMBC, Howard, Bowie State, and Coppin State, and also to relish in the fact that both UMBC and Howard are two institutions that are dear to my heart. One is my current home, and as Dr. Berman said, one as my alma mater. The Inclusion Imperative provides us an opportunity to highlight the unique contributions of the humanities to the academy, but also to our society. We all know that such disciplines teach, cultivate, and provide the tools necessary to engage and navigate civic life. This dynamic collaboration enables us to support and expand community-engaged humanities research, teaching, and learning, specifically focused on issues of equity, inclusion, and justice. I'm certain I don't stand alone in saying in such a time as this, our work is even more paramount. So that aligns well with today's symposium that provides a platform for us to grapple with these uncomfortable conversations. Folks, we are in the midst of a public health pandemic, still reeling from the impact of the November 2020 election, an unfortunate number of events that feel like a call for a racial reckoning in this country, and most recently, the increased gun-related incidents that have led to additional loss of life. This perfect storm, in many respects, is also a moment of opportunity for us. While we must and we will grieve and reckon from these atrocities, we must also start work on the new world we desire to live and work. My colleagues at UMBC have heard me say quite often that I do not desire to return to my home campus, the one that I left in March 2020, to be the same one that I return to when we do finally open our doors again. So we have a tremendous opportunity to make sure that doesn't happen with initiatives like the work of the Inclusion Imperative. And that happens with the start of these uncomfortable conversations. It means we have work to do that may require occasionally stepping on someone's toes, also consoling each other, and even holding one another accountable in order to move through and beyond the difficult discussions around race, equity, and inclusion. But who else better to do this work than those of us in the humanities? Those of us tasked with understanding human behavior, those of us tasked with striving for social justice among humans, and those of us who are most interested in improving how we live together. So I want to thank you for this moment. I want to thank you for your willingness to sit with all that sits around us so that we can teach, we can lead, and we can encourage ourselves to do even better. And I want to thank you all for being here today.